Um, well, just for the purposes, since it's a virtual meeting,
That's fine. I mean,
I think we usually do have that.
okay.
And typically that's in case we have anyone just calling in on the phone.
Yeah. Makes sense.
And they're not visible. Okay, so we are live on YouTube and I will begin recording whenever y'all are ready. So.
Lights, camera, action. Do we want to wait one more minute for any others who?
Sure, yeah, we can.
Yeah, how many do we have now?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 with Cindy, but I think she's still getting situated.
Okay. Find a good parking space.
Yeah.
7.
Actually driving home, so excuse the bumpiness.
No problem. Just be safe. All right, so I'll start recording. Okay, we are recording, and Ken, you can proceed when you're ready.
All right, super. Well, as chair of the HLPC, let me call this meeting to order. We are on September 17th, 2020. It's 5:17 in the afternoon. Greetings to all of y'all on the commission, and greetings to those watching on YouTube Live. So the first order of business will be to take a roll call of members. And so I'll go through those quickly. And Beatrice, I'll let you be the scorekeeper here because I've minimized the images of the committee members. So I can read the names, but I can't see everybody who's there. Okay, and so Dwayne Banks, I believe has not made it yet.
Has not.
Okay, Jeanette Bell.
Jeanette Bell is not here. So I'm sorry, Ken, you're not able to see everyone?
I have it sort of split because I have the roll call list in front of me.
Oh, sure. Okay.
So that's why I'm a little unclear. Wendy Brown. Don Davis.
Yes, here.
All right. Yay, Don. Welcome back onto the committee. Adrian Fajardo. Okay, hopefully he'll be arriving soon. Kenneth Haferteep, I am here. Amy Hines. Apparently not. Bernadette Hookham.
That's me.
Yay, Bernadette. Okay, thank you. And Cindy Holmes, we have as well. Aaron Shank.
Present.
All right, Cindy is present. And Aaron?
Present.
Thank you. Good to see you again. And Sharon Sprayberry.
Present.
All right, so the final score, Beatrice?
We've got 6 members, so we've got a quorum.
Excellent, excellent. Okay, oops, I guess I should have called the meeting to order after taking the roll call, but now we're double sure that we are ready to have our meeting. And we need to first start with a statement about the Open Meetings Act and the changes temporary changes under the pandemic. And that is that on March 16th, 2020, the governor suspended various provisions of the Open Meetings Act pursuant to his state of disaster authority. The change was effective March 16th, 2020 until further notice or until the state disaster declaration expires. In accordance with social distancing guidelines and while providing as much transparency as possible, the Waco Historic Landmark Preservation Commission meetings will not be open to the public attending in person. This meeting is being recorded and the recording will be available to the public. According to the Attorney General, governmental bodies must offer members of the public alternative methods of communication with their public officials. In an effort to allow for as much public input as possible, those who wish to speak by phone on agenda items were required to register with planning staff by 12 p.m. on September 17th, 2020, noon today. We have numerous speakers registered, and each will be allowed to speak for 3 minutes during the appropriate discussion item. And so that is the official statement on transparency. And so the first item on the agenda is approval of the minutes of our February 13th, 2020 HLPC meeting. And
So I wanted to give y'all an update on that. I was obviously not here for that meeting in February, and I'm having a hard time finding the information on that meeting. I'm still trying to track that down with a couple of staff members. So I think that's going to be available at the next meeting for you guys.
All right.
Apologies about that.
okay, very good. And Beatrice, we can note that Adrian Fajardo has joined us as well. Hey, Adrian, good to see you. Welcome back.
Good to see all of y'all. I'm glad to see y'all.
Yeah, all right. Well, and we're just getting started, so you haven't missed much at all. But now we're getting to the core of the meeting.
3 bits, yeah.
And Beatrice, what's first among the speakers now?
Right. So I guess the first after the minutes item, we've got discussion between the HLPC and City Council regarding HLPC activities and appointments.
Okay.
And so I did want to point out that Adrian Fajardo has been reappointed for a second term.
Yeah.
And so has Jeanette Bell and Sharon Sprayberry. Yes, and Sharon Sprayberry has been also reappointed on the HLPC. So congratulations.
Yeah, congratulations, guys.
Yes. So we do have one outgoing member, and we will go into more detail about that for the last item on the agenda. Our wonderful chair, Ken, is ending his second term. So this will be his last meeting, but we've got something together for Ken later in the meeting. So, and then the next item on the agenda is discussion regarding the reconstruction of a former local historic landmark structure. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen.
Great.
I'm going to share the information that we have on this month's agenda. Let me see. Okay, is that too small for everyone to see?
No?
I can see it, but I can't.
I can see it.
Okay, I can certainly zoom in if I need to.
Okay.
Let's do a 1 page. Okay. So this discussion item for the reconstruction of a former local historic landmark structure is in reference to what is now known as the Magnolia Church, now at 601 Webster Avenue. And just an update as of this afternoon, the lead project manager for the project had a conflict and is unable to attend this meeting, and so has requested that we, if possible, postpone discussion of this item to a future date. It is still on the agenda, and I'll just say that I could answer questions from a staff standpoint, but I certainly am not able to speak on behalf of the representative. So I'm unable to answer any specific questions on the project, but if you, I will say that Susie Wemberly, who is the project lead, has volunteered to offer her contact information if anyone has questions on the project between now and our next meeting. So that is that item. If Ken, it's up to you if you want to open it up for any sort of short discussion on that.
Yeah, I was hoping to get just a little clarification on it. But does anyone else have a question right off the bat, or?
I have a question.
Sure, Don.
In the definition of the reconstruction, according to the Secretary of Interior's standards, it says all this about the last part of it is in its historic location. So since this has been moved and being reconstructed at another location, is it actually considered a reconstruction of a historic property?
That's a good question. So we've looked at those standards and we've tried to, there's a document available through the THC website that highlights examples of reconstruction. We were a little bit confused on that ourselves because there are a few examples in there where structures have been reconstructed at a different site if the original site is no longer available for whatever reason. So I think we can get clarification on that from some experts at the THC and bring that answer to the next meeting.
Okay, good.
Yeah, and I guess the thing is, I've actually switched over to the planning services recommendation of approval of the move of the church, approval of the request for a certificate of appropriateness. And so on the findings, the first one says that the reconstruction will be based on the accurate duplication of historic features and elements and substantiated by documentary or physical evidence rather than on conjectural designs or the availability of different features from other historic structures. The reconstructed structures will recreate the appearance of the non-surviving historic structure in materials, design, color, and texture. And I guess that this is coming, this recommendation is coming out of cases like at Colonial Williamsburg, where they reconstructed the Palace of the Governors on its original site and trying to make it as accurate a reconstruction, not conjectural. And the phrase in there about rather than on conjectural design, guesswork, or the availability of different features from other historic structures, which seems to be an indication that using historic materials from other buildings is not appropriate either. But the thing that I find confusing here is that we're talking about what is essentially a reconstruction and not on the original site, so that it's sort of a double whammy. I'm fine with calling it a replica or an attempted replica, but I mean, there seemed to be an insinuation that they were moving the church, and it was pretty clear that the church was demolished. It's on video, it's on film. The walls came down, the roof came down, and the Magnolia folks said, well, that it was structurally unsound. That may well be true, but that doesn't make the replica the actual church. And so I'm actually concerned about having a marker claiming that it's the Second Presbyterian Church that's been moved when virtually every bit of material is new. And my worry is that the Secretary of the Interior standards are standards that were initially generated for the creation, for the restoration of a building. And I guess that there are additional recommendations in terms of the reconstruction, but it seems to me that there's something different between reconstruction of a building like a building at Colonial Williamsburg or some other museum, as opposed to a building that's being reconstructed for commercial purposes. And I guess, and I'll hush up after one more sentence. Basically, that in terms of the materials used, it seemed to be that the windows that were being put in there in the church were Pella windows, I just find it very concerning that this might confuse people that this is actually a historic church, when apparently the pews are old. some of the clapboard on the outside, apparent that at one point in our meeting, they told us that they didn't think there was much usable and that they were probably going to bring in clapboards from another building. So the amount of material that's actually from the Second Presbyterian Church seems to be very limited. And I'm not even sure why they needed to demolish it because, other than it seemed like it was kind of deniability was what's going to happen in terms of they're wanting to claim that they preserved an old church when preservation is not at all what they did. So those are the things that I was kind of concerned how clear it was to staff that this was actually going to be a new building in the shape, trying to duplicate the old building. When I voted for it, I thought what I was voting for was moving some large part of the building. And that turned out to be disastrously not the case. And I've witnessed with my own eyes the old church coming down. So I just felt, seeing what was happening there, that was not what we approved at the meeting. So those are just things to be thinking about in the future. And I won't be here, so hopefully you guys will be able to engage them in a good conversation about, what that was and was it appropriate treatment of a historic landmark of Waco.
Yeah, thank you, Ken. I appreciate those comments. And I think, like I said, I can't really speak on the project, on the specific details. I do know that we have one member of the public who is on the call or on the meeting right now, and it's Greg Godsey, who is the architect. And since this is not really an action item any longer, it's just a discussion item, I'll allow him to talk for up to 3 minutes. It's not really a public hearing, but Greg, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay. Hi, you're on the call. I think we can now hear you. I'm going to give you an opportunity if you'd like, since we're not really, this is an item that was requested by the representative to move forward to a future meeting. I just wanted to see if you wanted to provide any sort of insight in response to Ken's comments.
Sure. I think we should just clarify some facts. I'm a licensed architect, and I am the licensed architect of record on the project. There was some misstated facts that there was no architect on the project, but a company by the name of Heritage Restorations was hired to design the project, and that's incorrect. Heritage Architecture, which is my company, was hired to design the project, and we are an architect that specializes in reclamation and historic structures. Specifically pertaining to the project, about 80 to 90% of the interior material is reclaimed and has been reinstalled in the building. It's not just the pews, it's the complete floor system, it's the complete wainscoting, all of the trim, and all of the ceiling. It was all original longleaf pine, and it has been stripped, restored, and reinstalled, along with the pews. Additionally, all of the truss work was restored and reinstalled. And there were a few pieces where we needed to remake some pieces, like the doors. The doors were not salvageable. However, we were able to salvage the beamwork, truss work underneath the floor joists of the original floor. It was also longleaf pine. We remilled that material and built the doors from it. So from the standpoint of why did this building need to be demolished, and just as a reminder, the point of the first meeting was to get a certificate of appropriateness for a demolition permit. It was absolutely clear that we were demolishing the building and that we were moving the bell tower as one whole piece, which we did. The floor joists were then used to make doors and other millwork inside. So the level of restoration on this building is focused more on the inside than it is on the outside. And the purview for an historic commission, I realize, is mainly pertaining to the outside. So from an historic structure exterior, it may not fit the bill, but I don't think it's accurate or factual to say that this building could have been remade without demolishing the original building because of the amount of material that was restored, dismantled, and reinstalled.
Thank you, Greg. Okay.
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
This is Erin Shank. I drove by Magnolia, if you will, last night because when I saw this on the agenda, I wanted to see with my own eyes. And it's still a construction site and it's fenced off. And I felt like if I got out of the car, I might, get arrested or something. It's kind of hard to see what Greg is saying. I very much appreciate what Greg is saying, very much appreciate what Ken is saying, but it's sort of like describing something we can't really see. And I was wondering if there was a way before our next meeting, because essentially they're filing a motion for continuance. It's a lawyer, that's what it sounds like. And I think it's appropriate if they're scheduling. It's unfortunate that's happening as Ken, because he's such a wealth of knowledge, is circulating off our commission. But if we are going to agree to the continuance, if there's a way we could do a site inspection with them between now and the next time, sort of see with our own eyes what they're talking about. I think that would be appropriate, sort of like we did with the bridge. And I think that would help me. I'm not an architect, obviously, but I'm sitting in a building that was built in 1912 that I lovingly restored in a little bit of different fashion than this was. Of course, we didn't move this building, but I see both sides, and I think we would be able to come up with a better decision if we could see it with our own eyes between the time that we meet again and now.
Okay, thank you. I will certainly reach out to the project representatives to see if we can schedule something between now and the next meeting. I'm not really sure what their protocol is on inviting people on site if they've got construction going on and all that, but I can certainly see if we can facilitate something between now and when this comes back for discussion for a meeting. So I'll definitely keep you posted on that.
Okay.
Okay.
Beatrice, I guess something that the commission would probably be interested in seeing for the next meeting is where in the original thing that we approved, it said that it was a demolition permit. I don't remember seeing the term demolition permit.
I will say from a staff standpoint, we were aware that they were going to be essentially deconstructing or demolishing the original structure. That was clear to us. We weren't exactly clear on how that was going to take place.
Yeah, my impression was that it was going to be, at one point, I remember hearing it described as being taken apart piece by piece and then
Like Legos.
rebuilt at the new location.
Right, right. And I do think that to an extent we were under the same impression.
Yeah.
One thing
there were
that
a lot of pieces that were turned into matchsticks with the,
right, yeah. So, but we were made aware that they still needed to get in there into the bones of the structure, and they weren't exactly sure what was going to happen once they got in there and actually were able to take a look at the inside and see really what was salvageable and what was not salvageable. I know that there was some issues with some lead paint and materials that weren't safe to incorporate in the new structure because of code issues. And so, but I think those are questions on the details of how it was all done. I think those are questions that we can certainly ask during our discussion. And if we have the opportunity to go in and see the site, we could I'm sure ask a lot of those questions as well.
Yeah, it's interesting, the idea, if I'm understanding what Greg Godsey was saying, was that it was preservation of the interior. That basically, if you look at it from the outside, there's the steeple, and that's the part that was moved and reused, but that the 80 to 90% of the interior, so that it was preserving the finishes of the interior. And that's kind of interesting. I really can't think of another project where an interior has been, of the entire space, has been removed and then reused in another another shell. So it's just new ground as far as I can tell, as far as preservation law. So
Sure.
just something to think about.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Any other questions or discussion on that item? All right.
I guess we are good.
Okay. All right, so we will move on to our next item on the agenda, and we're so excited to have Tom Bach joining us today. He's come back to give us an update on the suspension bridge project, and I know that everyone is just so anxious to see that bridge restored. It's such an icon for Waco, and I know that it's been a long process to get to where we are, and Tom's going to provide an update on that. But just wanted to provide a little bit of an update and overview on the project. And Tom will go into more detail about this, but just a reminder that in November of 2018, this commission did review a proposal that was submitted for a certificate of appropriateness for the restoration of the bridge. And that certificate of appropriateness was approved with the condition that any updates or changes, and then as more details were brought about and discovered on materials for the decking, and I think some bird proofing devices and whatnot, the condition was that the commission would be informed on those things before completely moving forward with the project. And so that's just a reminder. At that time, we did not create a staff report recommendation for the certificate of appropriateness the way that we've done the past year or so since then, but we have drafted a staff report for this meeting, and so I'll pull that up in just a moment. But I'll let Ken, I'm looking at Ken. I'll let Tom go into his presentation. And Tom, did you want to share your screen for information, or do you want me to share mine?
Sure, I think I can share my screen. Let me figure out the technology real quick. Are you guys seeing the Word document that I'll be presenting from?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, so it's exciting to be to this point to be bringing a very concrete update to y'all, because as you may recall, the last time we met, we were right on the cusp of bidding, and even the bidding process raised a lot of questions for us. This has become an even larger investment for the community than we initially envisioned. But as you can see, a lot has transpired since the process began in 2018. Everything is under construction right now. We have quite a few major infrastructure projects underway, and that and other factors have conspired to create a pretty large size project for this community to take on. So
Tom, could you zoom in a little bit? I'm squinting a bit.
Yeah, absolutely. Is that better?
Much better, thank you.
Okay, wonderful. So the results of our bidding answered a few questions for us. Now we know entirely what is in the full scope of the project, all the way down to some of the decisions among ad alternates, such as barriers for the railings and things like that. So I can talk from a position of pretty good certainty about final finishes and materials. So we have a $12.4 million project that's conceived as an 18-month effort that's actually preparing to begin on site in about a month. In about 30 days, we should see the contractor mobilizing to begin securing the site. So what we have in the scope of the project, as we've talked around several times before, but definitively suspension cable replacement is the main thing that we began this process concerned about. The 100-year-old cables, they've exhibited some signs of stretching, and a calculated deadline was proposed of, hey, we have some critical concerns if these aren't replaced by 2025, I believe was the deadline. So we put in effect some timely efforts to get a project underway. So with the cable replacement, necessarily, you've got to go in and repair or replace the anchorages that those tie to. The original 1914 anchorages. Some of them are exhibiting signs of rust and section loss and things like that. So the engineer has figured out a way for us to actually excavate through the existing foundations to preserve the original, preserve the 1914 alignment of the cables and the anchorages, replace them with contemporary components that will result in not only the look that we're trying to preserve, but also the benefits of modern steel. The capacity will be considerably higher for the strength of this bridge, which is very reassuring from a Parks Department standpoint where we host public events on the bridge. Involved in this will also be the masonry repairs for the towers and the anchor houses, as well as with the span, the steel components of the span, such as the trusses and the cords beneath. They all need some attention and some coatings. It'll be very similar in appearance as what we see today. However, it'll definitely promote the long-term protection of the structure and corrosion prevention. The decking replacement, this is a big category of discussion. I know we've spent a lot of time on. The original structure has presently a 2x4 deck construction. So it's 2x4s on end that are placed out there in sections and clipped to the understructure. And that's for the main lane of the bridge. And then there's some side lanes, side pedestrian lanes that are also wood, but in a more traditional format. So the engineer's initial priority was water prevention. The existing wood that's out there, well, the original wood that was used was certainly more of a hardwood variety, and it was creosoted. So it's resistance to water and holding water was much greater than what we can replace it with commercially today. So as incremental repairs have arisen over time, this became a runaway issue. The materials that my staff here have been utilizing and that are available, they break down rather quickly by comparison in the UV, and they hold a lot more moisture. And so that's been driving a lot of the corrosion. And so the design objective of the engineer had been, what is a decking system that will not hold moisture against that steel? And so that's when this discussion of a fiberglass deck liner and a shallow concrete, textured concrete to emulate the look and feel of the existing decking, but definitely take a major departure from anything that can hold water. So the original concept from the engineer was that the main lane, as well as the pedestrian side lanes, would be this shallow concrete pan. What we have found in the interim in our efforts to properly preserve the existing railing structures, but bring them into a more code compliant configuration that provides the pedestrian safety that we're looking for. One of the factors that we were up against was a dimensional concern. If we placed that concrete decking on the sides, it would bring the pedestrian to an elevation that was no longer within compliance as far as rail height. And so this became one of the driving impetuses to say, let's go back and consider what are our hardwood options for these side decks. So the main line can remain concrete, or the main lane plan will continue to be concrete with an impervious substrate and not hold any water. However, these pedestrian side decks will be a Brazilian hardwood that will hold up well in the UV, be resistant to moisture and rot, but also in a configuration that's much more easily replaced, easy to monitor, and easy to keep an eye on if corrosion arises. So it's kind of a hybrid solution that takes one of the conditions that we currently have, as far as we have wood materials on both sides of the bridge presently, and so we will come back with wood materials. So it's nice to be able to say that we're doing that. And however, the interior main lanes will be in a format that is very protective of the corrosion factor. So from an investment standpoint, that is very important to the city to make sure that we don't have another project in 15 years to replace the steel underpinnings of the bridge. So moving on from decking, and there are some illustrations that I'll zoom to in a minute, but just going through the list, the railing and barrier, there's definitely some discussion about what the infill panels can be to close those 9-inch openings to a code compliant opening size without detracting from the aesthetic of the bridge. So we want to harmonize with it, but we don't want to cloud any perception of what's original materials. And so we've taken some time with that, and the contractor is able to provide a compatible dimension wire mesh, essentially. So the distinction here is that we're all familiar with the ubiquitous chain link pattern. This is not chain link. So the good news is that it's a stainless steel material, and it can be prepared in panels that mechanically fasten to what's already out there. So it sits pretty lightly on the structure that's there. It's distinguishable from the materials that are original. So we have some high expectations for the performance of this material, both from a maintenance standpoint, but also from the aesthetic standpoint. We want this to be as unobtrusive as possible. And then the anchor house repairs involve mostly masonry, some sealing of the existing brickwork. In our previous field trip, there were some questions about will it be possible to put a coating on the bricks as described in the plans, but instead of being opaque, is there a transparent option? Everything I've been able to dig into with the structural engineer suggests that if we're going to pursue the coating for its protective properties, there aren't any transparent options on the market at the moment. So that is one item that we weren't able to modify. And then of course there's generations of electrical work in each of these anchor houses, and anything that is no longer in service will be removed. That helps us from a safety standpoint, but that also helps us from an aesthetic standpoint, both interior and exterior. And then site work involves some new sidewalk, a considerable amount of new sidewalk to create new plaza approaches on both sides of the bridge that match. Presently, they have a combination of pavers, sidewalk, grass, mud, et cetera. And so this is a very high traffic location for us. It needs to perform the way that we can maintain it and look our best every day, but it also needs to be sensitive to the context. To kind of go through a few specific questions that came out of our last face-to-face, the concerns about, we're proposing an unconventional decking system. So there were some concerns about what that looks like, how that works. And one of the great opportunities of the tour was we have a sample that the engineers created, and we've been storing it on site. And so with the tour, many of us were able to look at that together. I forgot to include the actual photo as an exhibit in what y'all may have had access to in advance, but this was the best photo I was able to pull out of my record. So like you can kind of see, this is trying to demonstrate the full construction technique. There's a sample I-beam at the bottom. This is the fiberglass deck pan. And I'm not sure, are you guys actually seeing my mouse as I do this?
Yes.
Okay, wonderful. And then the stainless steel rebar. The most important part here that is hard to discern from the photo is the texture on top. There will be a tined grooved pattern that will emulate the pattern of the wood decking that we have presently. Contractor will be able to provide that for us. And then this diagram above that y'all do have in your summary there kind of illustrates what I was discussing before, where the center span will be the concrete decking as proposed, and the side decking will again be a wood material, a hardwood material that is resistant in all the ways we need. So that's kind of the recap of the decking discussion, and I hope that makes a good faith effort to get everybody comfortable with what's proposed. Let's see. Page up a little bit, back to this list. The specific questions also involved bird proofing devices. And so what was in the previous, the original application was kind of a diagram of what had been described as, bird exclusion devices or screening. And really what that boils down to is we've got a series of openings that we need to be very mindful of, particularly at the top of the towers. That's where the cables go up and over, and they sit on a metal saddle. And there's got to be some limited movement that saddle allows. And so that requires periodic maintenance and greasing. And so it'll be serviced as part of this project as well, but those same saddles will be used. However, we need to keep the birds out of there to reduce the amount of guano buildup. That guano obviously is acidic or corrosive, whether it's acidic or basic, I'm not sure, but it has promoted a lot of corrosion of those saddles. And so, and there previously may have been some other efforts to use a hardware cloth or chicken wire to reduce the amount of pigeons or owls that roost in there, but it hasn't held up over time. And so that's what led the design team down a path of what's a more durable, permanent solution. And so this material here, and we're looking at it digitally, and so scale is somewhat meaningless, but in the print format, if you were to print these 8.5 by 11s, this is at scale. So it is a perforated steel panel that's galvanized or whatever sort of inherent metal treatment, but then it will be painted to be as invisible as possible. So what we have right now are these openings at the top that, what you see is the darkness of the shaded cavity there. So I anticipate we will go through a mock-up process where we're looking for the most appropriate shade color. So it'll probably be a matte dark finish on these materials up high. And then they're also needed down low where the cables come into the anchor houses. So this illustration on the left kind of speaks the language of how do those cables kind of go through an opening. They spread out to be side by side as they enter the building. And so these panels are important. They're more effective than hardware cloth because they can be cut to this specific shape. And so the opening in the anchor houses is much smaller. The color will also be decided through a mock-up process to determine, do we want the same color as up in the tower, embracing that idea of what most resembles shadow, or is it more appropriate, since this will be closer to eye level, it may be more appropriate just to emulate the color of the stucco of the cable houses. So that's a process that we've communicated very thoroughly with the contracting team, that there are a certain number of submittal decisions that the engineer will likely have the final input on, but any and all aesthetic and material decisions will be retained at the City of Waco level. And, we're very sensitive to the aesthetic needs of the project. So the third and final key instruction was, hey, we are approving what is in these plans, or we're getting comfortable with what's in these plans, but if these plans change, as construction projects are subject to do, some process of notification and return update is needed, and I fully embrace that. So we've got a 18-month construction period, and any number of things can come up. I don't anticipate a lot of problems. You know, I'm an optimist. However, contractors are pretty good at letting me know when we need to come up with a creative solution to something that's in the plans. And so as those items come to our attention, anything that definitely alters, if something significantly alters our approach here, I'm here. So I'm more than happy to come back again and again as needed. For the purposes of this report, though, I've just tried to delineate what are some of the key things, or not the key things, what are the things that have changed since the application was turned in. So we've gone through the majority of them, but the barrier screen, we had a option in the plans that was more economical, and we had an ad alternate in the bid that is more sensitive to the configuration of the existing railing. And fortunately, we were able to accept the ad alternate. So I'm clarifying that here in section 4A. And section 4B, this was something that we had on a board at our site visit. This was a rendering, an artist rendering of some of the textures that we will be working out on site with the contractor. We have been approved for the ad alternates that included the decorative paving as well as some flagstone accents. We'll be mocking up some of those curves more specifically on site, just to make sure that they make most advantage of the context and lay properly on the land. But this image gives an idea of what those textures and the contrast will be. The anchor rod alignment, we were relieved to be able to actually, rather than, there was some debate actually about cutting and leaving the existing anchor rods in place, or trying to keep the existing alignment. And I think aesthetically, to remain true to the structure, preserving that existing cable alignment ended up being more important. So the trade-off is that the existing anchor rods that are embedded in the concrete, they will have to come out. So that was a pretty critical structural decision, though. The decking we've spoken about, the bird proofing we've spoken about. So those are the highlights, and I'm more than happy to turn it over for any questions there may be.
Okay, do we have questions from the commission?
Well, I would like to ask, we brought this up, I think the last time that you presented to us, Tom, we talked about getting a live cam so that the community could watch this project as it begins. You said it might begin in about 30 days, and I would love it if you could speak to that.
So this is an interesting question, because it's on my wish list too. We in the Parks Department haven't been set up for this, but I do know that in Indian Spring Park, there is a camera. I don't know if it's a security camera or a police camera specifically, but it is my hope still to work with municipal information to use that footage that's already rolling, but footage from that camera through the life of the project to be able to document the progress. So the live question is still unclear to me, but we will absolutely have footage of the progress, and that's at least a partial win. So I'm working on the details still.
Okay.
Thank you, Sharon. Good question.
I have a question, Don. Don Davis has a question.
Go for it, Don.
Apparently the previous bid proposals came in way over budget. What did you do to cut the pricing down, or did you?
That was definitely a painful process of weighing the options. When you get bad news, you don't have a ton of great options. And so we labored over a lot of that. We went through a bunch of scenarios of how could we cut the project to get it closer to the original budget. But similar to kind of council's first reaction to the project, when we identified that there was a very large project beyond just the cables that needed to take place. I'm talking 2016, 2017 when this first came up. Council embraced the scope of that project and said, you know what, we're not going to break this into phases. What's right for the community and what's right for the bridge is to do this in one step. It minimizes the closures and it addresses all the outstanding problems in one step, and we have a better quality result in the end. And so even after receiving a kind of staggering bid response, we looked at the array of options from the, the hard, this is the money that we already set aside. What can we do for that money? All the way up to what can we do to identify the supplemental funds needed to do the project the way we would really like to do it. And ultimately that won out. Council and management worked wonders too. And there were a lot of sacrifices made too. I'm well aware that some desires from other department projects, we weren't able to fund some things, but council and management are really committed to doing this project to the utmost. And so not only were we able to fund the entire project, but even the ad alternates that, since day one, we looked at as extras, but those extras are in here because this space is important. This landmark is important. And, this is not just a once in a generation opportunity to do right by it. It's once in 100 years. So we really took that seriously.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you for asking that, Don. That sort of hit me early on in the discussion, and then I completely forgot about it. So I'm glad that you had your more attention span than I did. Other questions, guys? The one thing that I would ask about is kind of cosmetic, and that is about the color of the stucco. I really don't know much about what shades the stucco has been painted over the years. I know on a lot of historic structures you can have a variety of colors over the years. The old land office in Austin originally was in a sort of stony off-white, and when the current Capitol was built in the 80s, they repainted it sort of pink to look like the red granite of the Capitol. And then when it was restored in the 1990s, they took it back to the original stony color. And you could make a good case for either one. But is the plan right now to have it look pretty much the way it is now, or has there been much study of how it has looked at different stages in its life?
That's a interesting. We've raised that question and that concern. It's a little troubling to try to determine what's original. What we do have in the archive is some notes about paint colors from previous renovations. And so we felt like that was a pretty reasonable way to try to approach this one. So if we're at least taking it back to a documented point, then we're making a good faith effort to do right by the bridge. I think the public expectation is that it's going to look as similar, if it looks drastically different, I think I will be fielding some phone calls, but yeah, I think our conservative approach is to try to use those paint references that were in, I think it was the 97 renovation. We have some plans.
Okay. Yeah. It's interesting. The sticking point or the biggest challenge seems to be the decking on the center, but I think you're doing the best that we can do in a situation that's basically a real challenge. And that, as with so many parts of the bridge, the wood that we walk over every time that we go on the bridge now, that's from the 1914 rebuild, and it was never intended to be exposed in the first place. So what we have right now isn't exactly presented in a way that was historically the way it was done when the building was when the bridge was reopened in 1914 or whatever it was around there. So it's kind of a challenge because in spite of the fact that we're all so used to that wood, it was never intended to be exposed. So it's a challenge. And given the traffic on the bridge, I think that the plan you've come up with is as good as we can get towards something that's respecting the historic character of the bridge, but still, wanting to make sure that it stays usable for a long time without another massive rebuild. So I think you're taking the responsible approach here. So thank you for your good work on that.
Oh, thank you.
This is Bernadette. I'm sorry.
Hi.
Hi. Can you talk for a few minutes again about the handrails and the guardrails that you're putting in? Is that going on the inside side of the bridge or the outside side? How are you handling the color and the contrast, or how are you doing that?
So the existing handrails, they were constructed in a time before there was actually a barrier code of any kind. So our sensitivity to that is trying to maintain the compliant rail height. So we have a little bit of vertical play in that with the decking. So to preserve the rail height at the appropriate height is a key thing. We're adding a kick rail at the bottom as well to close that. I think we have a 10 to 11 inch opening between the decking and the beginning of the barrier screen. So there's a kick rail that's being added to close that gap to 4 inches or less in either direction. And then with the openings in the diamond barrier screen, they're approximately 9 inches in both directions. So the screen panels will be mechanically fastened, I believe, to the inside of the bridge, so the hardware will be visible attachments from the inside. Because there are on the exterior, there are some diagonal supports and things that would make it more of an inconsistent attachment method if we tried to be on the outside. So it's intended to be as non-destructive as possible, as replaceable as possible as well, but with durable materials that won't corrode themselves or promote corrosion where contact occurs.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's an interesting question. Placing it on the inside, I guess, will make more of the original material better visible from the exterior as you're appreciating the whole bridge. But still does the safety job that we need it to do in a modern day and age. An interesting point. Other questions?
I had a question for Tom.
Absolutely.
Tom, I just remember from the suspension bridge from the 4th of July, where you used to be at the Brazos River. I don't know if anybody remember that.
Yep.
But there would be about 100 people on the suspension bridge, and it would be rocking back and forth.
Yes.
So with the new construction that is happening, would there be less of that rocking?
So that's exactly it's been a good thing for this bridge that the 4th of July has been hosted at Baylor, because those events are like the peak capacity. When you have a pedestrian loading that's wall-to-wall people end to end, that is actually more strain than that bridge has ever been under before.
Wow.
So that movement that you're feeling over time was increasing. And suspension bridges are designed to have sway. They're going to react to pressure from the wind. They're going to move as the temperature changes. There's always going to be a little play in it. And so I can't state that under crowd conditions there won't be any swaying. That I cannot guarantee. But what I can guarantee is that the cabling is going to be an order of magnitude stronger than what is out there. So the capacity will be higher for even our service vehicles and things like that. And then the second component that's kind of, this has been very important to the structural engineer, but it's less of a talking point for me, but there's an opportunity to highlight it, is the concrete and steel that will be going into the decking in the main lane also provide additional horizontal rigidity to the bridge. So it actually gives it more strength and more resistance to some of that swaying that you may have been feeling. So it's still going to flex, it's still going to move, it's still going to react to the wind and temperature, but perhaps to a much less perceptible degree. So I'm just as curious as you are, but I'll be much more comfortable on the 4th of July out there after this renovation is complete.
Right.
And thank you, Adrian. That's an interesting point.
I have another question.
Sure.
This week we had I watched a man climb the bridge.
Oh, no.
And can you talk a little bit about the safety signage that you're planning?
Yes, that's a feature. Like this is there are a couple issues inherent to a publicly available pedestrian bridge, and apparently one of them, the most common one, is people climbing on it. And so this is a difficult situation to manage. Managing human behavior is difficult, and so as a municipality, often we find the need for signage in a lot of it. And so what's a balanced approach to that on a historic structure? And so what's in the plans and what was in the previous, the original application for the certificate of appropriateness, we have had some time to think about, the color scheme of the bridge and the geometry of the bridge. There are these little triangular pockets at the top of each truss, right where people are trying to climb. And so we've done enough projects with plaques to realize that we can get cast aluminum plaques with a black field that will be, a reasonably harmonious color pattern, reasonably durable, because guess what? Signs people don't like often get vandalized. So anyway, I think every third truss in the peak of those little triangles, we will have a sign that says no climbing by ordinance, because it's already in the city's ordinance, specifically speaking about the suspension bridge. So this has been going on for a very long time.
Oh yeah, I know.
But we are unable to, properly enforce a lot of rules without, very, very, very thorough signage. And so this is a way to approach that and try to still be sensitive to the aesthetics, because I don't want to be tripping over signs. And this is such a remarkable landmark already that we have the behavior signs, and we also have all the, landmark acknowledgement signs from every agency that wants to celebrate this bridge, which is a good thing, but it can become too much very quickly.
Yeah, Tom, do you think your staff could come up with some no tortilla tossing signs?
Oh man, I was trying to avoid that subject. That is something we are wondering. we don't know yet. They're not as part of this project. So that's something that we're trying to manage more through goodwill ambassadors, through our park rangers and the like. But yeah, this has become a troubling tradition that wasn't always a tradition, despite what some people think.
Yeah, it seems to have, I haven't noticed as much of it lately, and I don't know if just
That's
walking.
one thing pandemics are good for.
Busy climbing it.
Well, any further questions for Tom?
It's Don Davis again. You said the sample of the decking is available for view.
Yes.
Where is it?
So it's in the cable house that is like if you're at University Parks, it's the cable house on the left. So if anyone would like to see that again or for the first time, I'm more than happy to grant access to that. And not to put a time crunch on it, but within the next 30 days, I've got unlimited access to the area, and it's very easy to get in there. After the 19th of October, it'll be fenced off and a little more difficult. So just let us know, and we can definitely get anyone in there to take a look.
Okay.
And for any of you who didn't get to go on that tour, it was really cool. So
Sure was.
it was pretty, and to be able to go inside the house and see the cables coming through the openings, and
Yeah.
it was awesome. So thanks so much for giving us an inside view on that.
Oh yeah, I love a field trip.
I'll add real quick, and it may or may not be available, but Tom, I actually just emailed you a photo that I took of the concrete decking example on that tour, and it might be a little bit better quality if you received it. If you didn't receive it, no big deal, but I just wanted to let y'all know that was available if you wanted to just take a look at another image.
Yeah, I don't think I received it actually.
Oh, it may have been too large of an image. So no worries.
My Baylor filter knocked it out.
I can certainly try to email that again after this meeting if you wanted to take a look at that, Don, but I still definitely encourage you to go by and take advantage of the next 30 days that Tom has access.
And after that, I'm sure we can get some construction phase inside looks if we so desire, but it just requires a little more coordination, that's all.
Be great.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Well, then thank you so much, Tom, for your excellent work on this. And we look forward to seeing the reality happening in the very near future.
Us too. And again, starting October 19th, they should be in there, and 18 months after that, we should be moving out.
Fantastic.
All right. Thank you all so much for your time.
All right, thanks.
Thank you, Tom. So I just pulled up the staff recommendation. This is the staff report for the certificate of appropriateness. These findings come out of the ordinance, out of our historic preservation ordinance. They are some of the criteria for a certificate of appropriateness for a landmark structure in Waco. And I'll just read through these in case you're not able to really view them. So so Planning Services recommends approval of this request for the certificate of appropriateness based on the following findings. One, the property will be used as it was historically. And we know that historically it has been used as a suspension bridge, maybe not the way it was originally as one for cattle runs, but it's been historically a pedestrian suspension bridge. Two, the proposed project maximizes the retention of distinctive materials, features, spaces, and spatial relationships. Three, the historic character of the property will be retained and preserved. Four, the property will be recognized as a physical record of its time, place, and use. Work needed to stabilize, consolidate, and conserve existing historic materials and features, or materials and features from the restoration period will be physically and visually compatible, identifiable upon close inspection, and properly documented for future research. As we know, Tom and his team have done a wonderful job in making sure that documentation is taken of the bridge and any changes in the past and future. 5, new additions, exterior alterations, or related new construction will not destroy historic materials, features, and spatial relationships that characterize the property. The new work for the proposed project will be differentiated from the old and will be compatible with the historic materials, features, size, scale, and proportion, and massing to protect the integrity of the property and its environment. And 6, the proposed project in whole or in part will not detrimentally change, destroy, or adversely affect any significant architectural feature of the resource or the historic character or value of the resource. So those are the findings that we've drafted, and you are welcome to discuss further, but that is Planning Services recommendation.
Thoughts? Yeah, the only thing I would mention is sort of this, comparing this project to the last, that the number 2, the proposed project maximizes the retention of distinctive materials. And there was just a lot of material that was not used on the old church. If there's no other comment, are we ready to vote on the certificate of appropriateness?
Yes.
Is that what we need to do? Did we already vote on it?
So the certificate of appropriateness was previously approved with conditions. So the action of the commission this evening would be to essentially take action on approval of the certificate of appropriateness and verifying that these conditions have been met.
I make a motion to approve the certificate of appropriateness for this particular project.
We have a motion from Sharon,
Second it.
and we have a second from Dawn. Any discussion?
I have a question on this,
Yeah,
our discussion point. If they choose during the project to change material or something, will we be notified, or how does that work?
So typically, if there's any sort of substantial changes to the project based on what was approved with the certificate of appropriateness, we do ask the applicants to come back for a little bit more review and verifying that it's in compliance with that certificate.
Thank you.
And Beatrice, is it fair to say that that would be especially true, that if it's like a major material, that would come to us, but you know, if it was something more minor, that would not necessarily.
Correct. Yeah, we're not going to ask them to come back for every small change that, you know, doesn't substantially impact the historic integrity of the project.
Okay. Yeah, I'm glad you asked that, Bernadette. Other comments or questions about this? Seeing none, I guess we're ready for a vote. So all in favor of the certificate, approving the certificate of appropriateness?
You can raise your hand since we can see everyone.
Okay, looks like we are unanimous, and it has in fact passed. So that was unanimously in favor.
Yes, great.
Okay, well, thank you guys for that.
Thank you, Tom. We really appreciate your due
Thank you, Tom.
diligence.
Thank you.
Good job.
Y'all, thank y'all. And I will offer some field trip opportunities in the future, so I'll be in touch.
And that camera, get that camera.
Well, Beatrice, is there anything else on our agenda?
Yes, we have a couple of items left on the agenda. So the first, I guess the next item is our election of officers for chair and vice chair. So as we know, each fall, as the new fiscal year begins, which starts in October 1st, that's when the new chair and vice chair are in effect. So usually at our September meeting, or as close as to that meeting as possible, we take action on those two positions. And currently Ken is our chair, who is rolling off, and then Aaron is our vice chair. And so just wanted to open that up for discussion on any nominations that you may have.
Can I nominate Aaron for becoming the chair?
I'll second that.
Okay, so we have Bernadette making a motion for Aaron to become chair, seconded by Don Davis. And I don't know that we need to, do we need a campaign speech from Aaron here?
Well, thank you, guys. It would be an honor. I'm sitting here in my law office, built in 1912, which they spent 12 years restoring. And it's now an Airbnb. I'm expecting a judge tomorrow that's going to stay here for the weekend. He's got kids at Baylor. So I'm muting myself because there's a cleaning lady here with a vacuum cleaner in the next room. So
great. Well,
I'm a lawyer and an Airbnb now in this place. What things you have to do when it's a pandemic, yeah.
Really? So I think I'm hearing that if we vote to approve you, you will accept.
Yes, absolutely. That would be an honor.
Okay, other questions, or should we move to our vote? Okay, let's move to our vote. And so all in favor of Aaron Shank as chairman of the Historic Landmark Preservation Commission, raise your hand. And it is unanimous once again. Congratulations, Aaron.
Thank
Yay.
you.
And so that creates a vacancy because Aaron will no longer be the vice chair. Or is that the proper term, Beatrice? Vice chair?
That's correct, yes.
Okay. So we need a vice chair for the commission as well. Are there nominees?
I nominate Bernadette to be vice chair.
I second it.
Okay, so we have Cindy Holmes nominating Bernadette Conrad Hookham as vice chair and Sharon Sprayberry seconding. So Bernadette, campaign speech.
I appreciate y'all for considering me. I am new, so y'all have to take some time for me to get used to this whole process. So I appreciate the nomination though.
All right. Are there other nominations? I don't think I said that for chair. Seeing none, shall we move to a vote on this? All in favor of Bernadette as vice chair, please raise your hand. Once again, unanimous. Congratulations, Bernadette.
Thank you.
Yeah, you can now demand a recount if you want.
Too late, too late.
Okay, so we have successfully named our chair and co-chair. So very cool. And Beatrice, what else do we need to do?
Okay, so the last second to last item on the agenda is our expression of appreciation to outgoing board members for their service on the commission. And as I've said already, Kenneth, we are sad to say that you're no longer going to be a commissioner. We have a gift for you that we'll have to mail since this is a virtual meeting, but our staff assistant was saying that I should have worn a gown this evening so that I could display this award like they do on The Price is Right. But here is your, this is actually a paperweight with your name on it. And it says, Kenneth Haferteep, in appreciation of your dedicated service on the Historic Landmark Preservation Commission from 2015 to 2020. So you've served for 5 years.
Wow.
Yeah, and we really appreciate your service during that time. And then the other gift, you get two. The other gift is an honorary gavel with your name on it as you served as chair this past year. Kenneth Haferteep, Historic Landmark Preservation Commission Chair from 2019 to 2020. So you can use it as you see fit.
Yeah, maybe for faculty meetings and museums.
There you go. And now you have one. So we just wanted to say that your service on this commission has been absolutely essential. And I know I personally have reached out to you many times to get some insight and expertise, and you are always so helpful as well with our award ceremonies and being willing to present during those occasions. And I think I speak for all of us when I say that you have been so valuable and we really appreciate you. And we still have your picture up here.
I know. So much younger me.
So Ken has served in the past and then been reappointed, and I would not be surprised if you're willing to serve that you would be reappointed in the future. But for the time being, we are just so grateful for your service these past 5 years.
Well, I've enjoyed working with the commission, working with you guys, and I know that you guys are going to do great work going forward. So keep it up.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ken.
Yay.
Yes, thank you, Ken, for your great service. If you ever want to come back on, we'll rein you in, sure.
Well, thank you. Much appreciated.
So the last item is our scheduling of future agenda items. Right now, we're only aware of that one discussion item for the Magnolia Church that will be coming to you in the future. With that said, right now with our emergency declaration order that's in place, we have been given we had to get approval from city manager to have an HLPC meeting because it wasn't one of the boards that was originally approved in the order to have these public meetings. So moving forward, I think we'll meet on an as needed basis. And so I'm going to touch base with the Magnolia representatives to see what date works for them. Also ask the question about maybe doing an on-site tour for that item so that you can get a good visual of the project as well. And I think actually one other thing that I wanted to just kind of put out there is because we're not meeting in person for the time being, we've postponed the award ceremony, and we were trying to schedule that for the fall. We had historically been having that ceremony in the spring, but then at some point it was agreed to have it in the fall. But just with everything going on, I think we're going to postpone that. But I did want to let y'all know that if you have ideas for nominations, you can certainly forward those to me. At some point, we're not sure how long this pandemic is going to go on for. And if at some point we want to have a conversation about doing a virtual ceremony, we could certainly look into having something like that as well. And I mean, I think at some point we would all happily meet in person again, but until we know when it's safe to do so and everyone is available to do so, you know, for the time being, we're going to postpone it, any meetings in person. So those are the only two items that I had to mention. I'll be reaching out to everyone via email, and I'm always available if you have any questions via phone call as well.
Thank you, Beatrice. Thank you for all the good work that you do.
Yeah, you're welcome.
All right. Well, then I guess the final thing is to see if we have a motion to adjourn.
I so move.
Okay. I think Aaron got that. So a second
I'll second it.
from Don. And then thirds from Bernadette. So all in favor of adjournment, say raise hand. And once again, it is unanimous. Thank you, guys.
Thank you,
Thank you
everyone.
so much, Ken.
Okay. We
be
will
safe.
see y'all down the road.
All right.
Have a wonderful evening, everyone.
You too. Thank
You too.
you.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you.